Greetings, chess fans. My name is Arturs Neiksans. I'm the leading Latvian chess grandmaster, and I would like to provide you with my recap, my 2 cents about what happened in the fifth game of the World Championship match being Liren against Dommaraju Gukesh. So I was unable to make the recap right after the game because I was quite a bit preoccupied since I'm in Berlin in Germany participating in Bundesliga. Either way, I had a long time to think about this game. Here we go. So Gukesh opened up with e4, which I suppose is not really a big surprise. Essentially, we got a repeat of the French defense that they played already in round one. So d4, d5, and as you might recall, in the very first game, Gukesh played knight c3, knight f6, e5, knight e7, and here he opted for this very odd idea, f4, knight e2, c3, knight f3, and went on to be completely outplayed. So the big question is, what has Gukesh and his team prepared against the French? And the answer, to be honest, shocked me. It was e takes on d5. Now, I have the utmost respect, obviously, for both players, and I definitely know that this is the trend of the opening theory, at least in the French. So French defense is coming back once again to the competitive chess it was played in the past couple of years by some of the best players in the world, like Magnus Carlsen. I think also Fabio Caruana has played it more than once, and it's becoming again quite a big thing. And this trade exchange variation e takes on d5 is sort of an understandable choice because white aims for a slightly better position. But what I quite do not understand why Gukesh is playing this, because it feels like a weird choice for a young attacking player who is playing against the world champion, who at the moment is not very confident in his play. So I thought if you're playing e4 and your opponent plays the French defense, you have to play something really principled. And I was actually thinking, could it be that Gukesh was simply caught off guard in the very first game in the French defense, and then he cooked up this interesting continuation g4. You probably remember the game one recap. And then basically he has no arguments, the French defense. And he played this exchange variation just out of lack of ideas. I would not really like to believe it because I know how seriously they prepare at this level, and I still lean towards the explanation that nowadays in the World Championship match, it is a very popular thing to try to test some concepts for one game only. So the old times when the players are playing the same system over and over and over for the entirety of the match, it's gone. You're not gonna see it again. So they're playing on purpose offbeat continuations just for one game. And I think that Gukesh probably has prepared like 10 continuation he's ready to play against the French, and in this game e takes on d5 was one of them. Actually, it kind of resembles the Petrov defense. So after e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, knight e5, d6, knight f3, knight e4. So there's the idea of d4, d5, and bishop d3. But we can even get here by playing d3, d5, and bishop d3. There you go. Actually, I was watching the video analysis of Magnus Carlsen earlier today on Take, and he said he was even trying sometimes to get these positions from the white's perspective with e3, hoping that black plays e5, and then he plays d4, d4, d5, and whatever. Yeah, whatever. I don't really think this is something special, but either way, I do see the idea, because white's idea is to get a simple attacking game. For example, let's say black is completely oblivious to what white is planning. You want to play like a castle, you want to play bishop g5, you want to play rook e1, you want to play c3, knight e2, queen c2, knight e5, f4, and build up a nice attack at the king side. So it's quite understandable. So Ding played c5, which is the modern touch, because for already quite some time, the modern chess engines, they evaluate IQP positions as nothing special, meaning black is not afraid to enter these positions, which maybe something like 20 years ago would be written in all chess books that white is just much better because black has a weak pawn on d5. Not anymore. It's a strong pawn in the center and black has a free development. So that's why here Gukesh did not even try this. He played c3, which is an idea from the Kola system. So imagine here we have the pawns on e3 and e6. This is a typical idea to ensure that after c4, this Slatko bishop stays on the long diagonal. c4, bishop c2, bishop d6, queen e2 check. This is some, again, opening trend. I'm not gonna really argue that I know much about it. I just basically don't. But the idea of queen e2 check is that white is trying to provoke black to play queen e7, which black did play queen e7. And after the trade, the point is white is somehow slightly better. So here, Ding decided to play king takes on e7, bishop takes on e7. As far as I heard from Anish Giri, it's apparently written in his chessable course. The black is completely fine after bishop takes on e7. Ding apparently did not know that. Okay, king e7 also makes perfect sense because black is about to make a short castle here. Now it's not so easy for white to prove the opening advantage. So with the pawn on c4, this is really tricky. And I agree what Magnus said on Take, a video. The point is that for white it's not so easy to prove is this really bad or good, because if white plays b3 and black is forced at some point to play, let's say, c takes and a takes, I would say that probably white achieves a bit something, because white has 2-point islands here. As you can see, black has 3 islands. White has also opened up the a file, and maybe you also can think about moves like c4, knight c3, or bishop a3 and just play quite positional chess. So, but the point is, after b3, black doesn't have to do all of those things. He could play just b5. For example, if white tries to open up the queen side, takes it on b3 and b4, it seems that white is not even achieving a thing. So that's why this is not really so easy to play for white. What Gukesh did, he played rook e1 check, king f8. I thought he wants to occupy d5 square. No, he decided to trade on e8. He played bishop g5, knight e7. And here there was a very interesting moment. Maybe here Gukesh had to try to play knight h4, which is endorsed by the engines. The point is he wants to play knight f5. Now after h6 he plays knight f5, intermezzo move, hitting the bishop on d6. Then after bishop takes on h2, king takes on h2, h takes on g5, white wins back the pawn on g7, king f8, knight f5, knight b6. But again, the big question is, how real is this advantage? Is it even any advantage at all? Because black just wants to take on f5, play king e7, king d6, and essentially build the Great Wall of China. So how exactly white is planning to crash through? So I'm pretty sure that Gukesh was looking at this position. He decided not to do it. He played knight e2 pretty quickly, by the way. And now what happens? h6, bishop h4, and knight h5. Now this was a brilliant choice by the world champion, because what he's threatening to play g5, trap the white bishop, and essentially claim a 2-bishop advantage. So rook e1 check was played, king f8. So, by the way, here you can see Gukesh was already out of the book, so he spent 20 minutes, and probably during this time he realized his opening advantage is simply not there. So, what do you do right here? So, I think what should have happened, as it normally happens between pragmatic players, you realize you have nothing in the opening. For example, if you play something like knight f1, allows your opponent to play g5, bishop g3, knight takes on g3, h takes on g3, so black is going to play probably something like b5, knight e3, and either knight b6 or knight f6, I don't know, you occupy d5 square, black just ignores it, and probably somehow this is level, but it's very much playable. And it's not really a terrible idea to go here. Now, what happened here? It really surprised me. And it was received with mixed feelings among chess professionals. The move I'm talking about is the move g4. When I saw this move, my first initial expression was a reaction. This is a mistake. It's just a positional mistake, because, I mean, why would you weaken the f4 square for no good reason? Of course, here Ding did play knight f4, even though he spent 8 minutes. I think he was here purely delaying his decision based on shock. He didn't believe that g4 is actually a possibility. But the point is, white does save his bishop here and avoids the g5, bishop g3, knight x on g3 idea. But the question is, at what cost? Because the knight on e4 is for black feeling a monster. This is a great outpost, and even more, it's getting to d3. So what Gukesh did, he played bishop g3, pinning the knight on f4 and also the bishop on d6. There was a brilliant response by Ding, which, by the way, makes again perfect sense. So here Ding, at some point, as soon as he secures the bishop on d6, he wants to play knight e3, capture with his c-pawn, and now you see this knight on b6 is jumping to c4, support a pawn on d3. Oh, and by the way, the pawn on g4 is also under attack. So Gukesh played g5. And I was looking at this position and trying to understand, yeah, this is really interesting, and indeed, Gukesh is trying to complicate the matters. But is he really hoping that this is going to give him some advantage or a sharper fight? The more I was looking at this position, I realized if somebody is risking here, it's only white. Even though there were some tricks. Like, for example, there was this trick with knight h3 check. King goes here, you cannot take on g5, the bishop on d6 is hanging, and after bishop takes on g3, white has apparently a very cool g takes on h6 intermezzo move. So the point is the bishop retreats, you play h7, you promote your pawn. Yay, congratulations. So black played g takes on h6 after h takes on g3, now black's position is just in shambles and white wins. Probably. Yeah, I mean, this is of course fantastic, but what if black doesn't do this? And indeed, here Ding played h takes on g5, knight takes on g5, and he just played bishop d7. Again, a pretty cool move, because he is not rushing with f6. The knight on g5 is not really standing that great. The knight on e4 is a monster. So what happened next is Gukesh retreated with the knight f3. And now the first sign that Ding was really thinking about a peaceful outcome, he played rook e8. And this is essentially a draw for which, by the way, I think up to this moment makes perfect sense, because when we look back at the opening phase, what happened? Gukesh played an unambitious opening. He entered an exchange French, traded the queens by move 10 or so. Then he was apparently unhappy that he didn't get any really fighting chances after the opening. He tried to complicate things with g4, g5, and he is still within the balance. So Gukesh plays rook e8 because the match situation suggests the draw with black is okay. By the way, I think if Ding was a bit more ambitious, or if black was playing Magnus Carlsen, why not play rook d8, right? Because black is definitely not worse here. Black's pawn structures is looking a bit better. And now if white plays something like knight e5, you can proceed with bishop takes on e5. And again, the knight is getting to d3. Okay, let's say white doesn't play knight e5, white plays knight f1. You can execute the same idea. You can put the bishop on g4, protecting the bishop on d6, and the knight is getting to d3. Again, white would have to come up with some imaginary knight h4 to keep the balance on the board. Again, trying to play knight f5 for something. But again, black just easily plays knight e3. Let's say you decide to... What do you do here? I don't even know. Yeah, engine says rook b1. White keeps the balance, because everything else like bishop takes on d6, rook d6, bishop d3, c takes on d3, no, this pawn is a monster because it's backed by the bishop on g4 as well. Either way, I think that here Ding was completely entitled to be ambitious. He decided not to do it, so he played rook e8. Now what happened next? That was a major shock to me. So I was thinking about it for a long time what happened here. So Gukesh played knight e5, and again he spent here, like 1 minute, he played knight e5, which is perfectly understandable. He wants to trade off some pieces. Now after bishop takes on e5, instantly, d takes on e5. And when I was looking at this, I was asking myself, wait a second, are you really playing this position for the win? Because knight e3 is incoming. It is incoming, right? So after knight e3 was played, Gukesh suddenly realized, uh-oh, things are really bad, because he has to take it, because the knight on d3 is hitting the pawn on b2, the rook on e1, the pawn on e5, and you just can't not take it. And maybe he had seen this position that he gets to play b3, he gets to play f3, king f2, king d3, king d4, and somehow capitalize on the weak pawn on d3. But I don't believe this, because you normally expect a continuation from your opponent and the pawn on d3 I'm sorry, it's a monster. So of course, black could just play rook c8 and hit a pawn on c3. And if here Gukesh would play rook c1, d4 is a very easy move, exploiting a pin. So if white plays c4, again, knight e5 is not a very difficult move to find. Knight is coming to c3, the pawn on d3 is looking really alive, and it can be supported by the bishop on f5 as well. So what happened here? I have a theory. I think Gukesh wanted to take with the rook, and then he forgot and took with the pawn instead. Because the difference here this position is pretty harmless, because now I can play b3, now there's no rook c8 to hit a pawn on c3, and white is just pretty safe. White is gonna play f3, king e2, king e3, king d4, and white is never gonna lose. Yeah, so here I'm not even sure if Ding would have to play knight e3. Probably he would. He could also play like bishop a4, include this nice tricky move. By the way, look at this. Bishop a4, bishop takes on a4. There's some tricks with knight e2 check, king f1, knight takes on g3, take on a4. Hit a pawns. There's so many resources in this position. But yeah, what happened next was essentially it just felt like a feeling that Gukesh essentially shot himself in the leg. And Ding, he was like quite surprised to see this. So he played knight e3, bishop d3, c takes on d3. And here Gukesh played f3 because he wants to launch the king to the d4 square. So what do you do here? What Ding did makes perfect sense. Yeah, so he played knight c4. And he made this move like in 5 minutes, which I don't think this is a very good time management, because I think he should have sensed that he is better. And I don't know what he was talking about in the post-game press conference. He said he was not sure he had an advantage here. I mean, really? I mean, your pawn is on d3, it's a monster. There's knight c4, there's knight a4. This pawn cannot be easily challenged. You're like doubting that black could have an advantage here? I find it very hard to believe, to be honest. How can it be? I mean, if I was sitting here with black, my only question would be, how big is my advantage? I mean, I would maybe not say that I'm winning here. No, definitely not, but I would be like completely sure I'm definitely better. The question is how much. And I would be choosing between knight a4 and knight c4. And knight c4, let me tell you, it does make perfect sense because it simplifies the position and secures the pawn on d3. Well, apparently knight a4 maybe was a bit trickier. Because now the point here is that you can't play b3, drops the pawn, and if you play rook b1, there's a very powerful move f6. You hit the pawn on e5, if white takes on f6, rook e2, it just feels very dangerous. Now this pawn is a monster. So f takes on g7, king g7, even king g8, whatever. So white just gonna do it. And let's say after f6, white plays f4, I don't know, you just play like something like bishop f5. And you keep pressing this, and for white it's very difficult to come up with the sequence of the defense. Maybe actually black can sacrifice the pawn, d4, c takes, rook c8, rook c2, and just keep rock and rolling forward. Okay, d4, maybe white can play c4, but you get a point. I mean, it's so dangerous for white. All right, so I understand it. So Ding played knight c4, makes perfect sense. Knight takes on c4, d takes on c4, rook e4, brilliant choice by Gukesh. So he's obviously going for an active defense. He wants to put the rook on d4. And now, what happens next is a mystery. So up to this moment, the game was pretty logical. So Gukesh played unambitious opening. He misplayed. He didn't misplay. He didn't get anything out of the opening. He got a bit ambitious. He was angry. It didn't really work for him. He played g4. He missed something, and now he's worse. So Ding, at the moment, he's just reacting. He's doing nothing bad. So he's playing as he's supposed to. Now, what do you do here? What happens next? Let me just show you the next moves. So Ding plays bishop c6, which doesn't really seem to be a terrible move. It hits the rook on e4 and hits the pawn on f3. So the point here, white cannot take. I think this is not very difficult to calculate, right? I mean, you play rook d8 and this pawn is rolling forward. Rook d4, takes, hasta la vista. There you go. So the d pawn simply advances forward. White cannot stop it. Not really difficult stuff. Of course, you also expect the rook is not going to go back. So rook d4 has got to be the move. Now, Ding takes on f3, which again makes perfect sense. I mean, he collects the pawn. White cannot take on c4 because d pawn advances. King f2 played by Gukesh. Now, Ding plays bishop c6, allowing white to take on c4. Now there's no d2 because of rook d4. Now, Ding plays rook d8, allowing Gukesh to trade the rooks and enter a drawn endgame. And then he gives up the pawn on d3 for a fortress and plays for a draw from a position of strength. I mean, what? Why would you do that? You know, and later I would read the tweet of Nepomniachtchi, and he was also shocked. I was shocked. It's like, when you have an extra pawn, why are you going for a fortress? And you give up 2 pawns just to build a fortress. I mean, why not? I mean, why? And this is how the game finished, actually. Yeah, so, of course, Gukesh was super happy and they finished in a draw. And apparently Ding was very happy about the game. But wait a second, let's just go back here. What happened here? Because, am I really seeing things correctly? Black has an extra pawn with a very strong pawn on d3. Am I missing something here? So, here after king f2, why not bishop h5? Because again, rook takes on c4, you cannot do it. d2, d1 just advances. Okay, I get it. King e3 could be a move. Of course, Gukesh will play it in a heartbeat. But wait a second. Black just plays b5. And if my calculation is correct, black has an extra pawn, right? Well, I'm perfectly aware that white is very happy. But why would you agree to a draw from a position of strength? Well, I think the answer might be hidden in the match strategy. And also Ding's expectations when he was arriving for the game. Because in a World Championship match, you heavily rely on your white color. So it's a very accustomed to play for the win with the white color, and with black you play for a draw. But I think it's a flawed strategy. I think normally you have to look for your chances whenever the chance arises. And there you go. In this game, the chance arose out of nowhere. I mean, let me go back. So Gukesh unexpectedly made a huge mistake. I mean, he took with a pawn. He didn't take with the rook. D takes on e5. He essentially shot himself in the leg. This is your chance. This should have triggered some alarm bells for Ding. I have to win this game. Right now, it doesn't matter I'm playing with black. He didn't even try. I thought that was really shocking. And if you want to give me what could have been the perfect continuation for black, okay, it's not very obvious. Apparently it's bishop e6, rook d4, and play rook c8. So the idea is to play something like rook c5, rook b5, or rook c6, rook b6, try to get a pawn on b2. So apparently white can still somehow hold on by playing bishop f2, rook c6 is rook d6. Oh wait, you cannot actually do it. Wait, yeah, you just play rook c6. Rook d6, I suppose you just trade here and d2 advances, but white could make some quiet move. Maybe something like king f1, maybe. Rook a6 could be a move. Hit a pawn here, here. This king can go around king h7, king g6, king f5. Wait a second. I mean, black just has an extra pawn. Very strong pawn on d3. And this is the position you should always play out from a position of strength for at least a couple of hours. There's zero risk for Ding at all. I don't understand this. So this was really shocking. That here Ding decided not to continue this entire sequence of bishop takes on f3, bishop c6, give up the pawn on c4, give up the pawn on d3, armor for position of strength, claim a draw. It's a terrible choice, right? Either way, yeah, it was very, very shocking indeed. But the match remains level, and I think that it's fair to say that Gukesh has survived a major scare. But I don't like it. I don't like how this match is ongoing. Unfortunately, the first games have been a bit disappointing to me. Because whenever there's a World Championship match, I expect it's going to come with some groundbreaking ideas, at least in the opening phase. And by the way, today in German Bundesliga, I tried to replicate the most interesting game from a theoretical standpoint, what Gukesh played against Liren in round 3. Remember the c takes, queen c2, h3 idea. I played it today myself in Bundesliga because I thought it's a cool idea. All the other games at the moment, unfortunately, they're a bit disappointing. This is how I feel as a chess fan myself, as a chess professional, because I'm also looking towards the World Championship as a great spectacle. I have the greatest admirations for both players. I deeply respect, of course, Liren as a very humble player and great player. And by the way, I recently covered on my YouTube channel his immortal game that he played back in 2017. Of course, Dommaraju Gukesh is one of the young superstars. I had a chance to meet him myself 2 years ago when I was doing the commentary for Bilch's Festival. But unfortunately, at a moment, the matches, I'm a bit disappointed, to be honest, at least in the opening choices. And I'm hoping also that the players are going to step up a bit. And I would hope that Gukesh is going to play a bit more sharper chess in the opening phase. But listen, I mean, this is again my perspective. This is how I see it. Obviously, I know they have input incredible amount of work in their prep. I mean, probably Gukesh has prepped like 6 or 8 months for this match non-stop. He definitely knows more than I do in these lines. So I'm sure they're thinking they're making the right choices. But from my perspective, the exchange French, I'm sorry, it doesn't really feel like that. Either way, write your thoughts. What do you think about the game? Do you think that Ding made the right choice by not trying to play for the win? I do not think so, but maybe you think otherwise. What do you think about Gukesh's opening choice, this exchange French e takes on d5? Is this the future at chess, or you would like to see something else from the young Indian's perspective? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. And of course, if you enjoyed my video, please do not forget to press like, and also please subscribe to my channel, as I will be making daily recaps of the World Championship match. Thank you for watching. I'm signing off.